All right, let's practice some sentences. I'm going to prompt you with 5 English sentences based on the grammar from Unit 1, Lesson 16. Man, that's a high lesson. And it's going to be your job to try to translate those sentences into Korean. The first sentence I would like you to try is, Korea and China are culturally different. I'll give you 10 seconds, and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence here, and the thing that we are saying is different, is just in whole is Korea and China. So what I'm going to do is make something, or make the subject be Korea and China, and the way that I can do it is by writing first Korea, which is 한국, and if I just put 중국 after that, this just says Korea, China. It doesn't say Korea and China. If I want to say Korea and China, I have to use one of the particles that indicates that I'm talking about two things like this to make the meaning of and. It could be 한국이랑 중국, but I'll use 과, but it doesn't really matter which one you use. 한국과 중국. Now, if I put the particle 은 here, that's telling me that both of these things together are the subject of the sentence. So what I have right now is Korea and China. If I just say at the very end of the sentence, if I just put 다르다 at the end of the sentence, and that's not conjugated yet in any honorific or anything like that, but if I just put that right now, even though I have this huge gap in the middle, this sentence says, Korea and China are different. Well, okay, I know they're different, but are they culturally different? And that's more specifically what I want to say. I'm going to just erase this because I usually conjugate my final verbs and adjectives using the informal high respect form. And if you remember your irregulars from lesson 7, you should remember that it's 달라요. Now again, this still says Korea and China are different. It doesn't say anything about them being culturally different. In lesson 16, you learned that the word for culture is 문화. So I can put that to start, but that's nothing yet. 문화. Now, if I put 적 after that, that says cultural. Okay, that's not what I want to say. I want to say culturally. Now, if you ever have any of these nouns that sort of say 문화적, if you put 으로 at the end of it, that adds sort of the 으리 at the end of the English translation. There's a lot of space here, but this whole sentence would read, 한국과 중국은 문화적으로 달라요. The next sentence I would like you to try is, kimchi is a scientific food. You might be looking at this sentence and thinking, when would I ever say that ridiculous sentence? Well, Korean people are very proud of their kimchi, and there actually is a lot of ingredients in it, and they often say that it's a scientific food because there's so many ingredients that are healthy for you, and they call it scientific. Try to translate this sentence. I'll give you 10 seconds, and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is kimchi, so I'm just going to put this at the beginning. Now, if I just say that and I put food here at the end, 음식, and I'm saying that it is a scientific food. So if I add ida, and I'll conjugate this using the informal high respect form, and to do that I'll have to do this to add ieo at the end of it. Right now, this actually is a sentence, and that just says kimchi is a food. Right now, I just have kimchi is a food, and I don't have the scientific translation in there. The scientific, if I want to add scientific to the sentence, is very similar to the cultural or culturally. I'm not going to use 으로 because I don't have scientifically, I just have scientific. If I want to say just the word for science, it's 과학. 과학. Now that just says kimchi is a science food or something like that. That doesn't really make any sense. I could put 적 here, and that actually would be one way to say it, but usually if you want to describe sort of an upcoming noun like this, you want to add this addition to the adjective. But this isn't something that can describe something on its own. If I put ida here, and as you saw that all of these 적 words can have ida after them, and if I add this to ida, what I get is 과학적인, and that sort of allows me to describe this upcoming noun, which is food. Now this whole sentence would read, 김치는 과학적인 음식이에요. The next sentence I would like you to try is, I am proud of my son. I'll give you 10 seconds, and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is I, so I'll start by putting this here. The adjective to be proud is 자랑스럽다, so I'll put that at the end of the sentence. It's going to be 자랑, and I'll put it, or I'll conjugate it in the informal high respect form, and this is always a behemoth of a conjugation because 스럽다 sort of is a long thing to write, and it was 스럽다, but it's going to be 스러워 I always love, and you could even make that longer. For example, if you said 자랑스럽습니다, it sort of flows off the tongue very nicely. And I remember when I first learned Korean, I thought, wow, look how crazy that I can say it or write such a long word. But after a while, you sort of get used to saying these things, especially when the word itself isn't very long, and it's more the conjugation that sort of makes it become long. So anyways, this just says, I am proud. Well, what am I proud of? Or who am I proud of? Well, I'm proud of my son. And in lesson 16, I taught you that if you want to indicate that you're proud of somebody, what you need to do is, well, let me just first write my son. So I can say, 저의 아들. And if you want to do this, what you should do is either put 이 or 가 after the person that you're proud of. So in this case here, I have 아들 ends in a consonant, this consonant here. So I'm just going to put 이. Now this sentence would read, 저는 저희 아들이 자랑스러워요. The next sentence I would like you to try is, I was disappointed in that restaurant. And let's try another one at the same time, which would be very similar. And it will be, that restaurant was disappointing. I'll give you 10 seconds to translate both of these sentences. And if you need more time, pause the video and play it again when you're ready. All right, these two sentences are very similar, and I deliberately chose, as I like to do, as you've seen in my most recent videos, the last two sentences to be sort of similar translations to sort of drive home a point that I talked about in the actual lesson itself. So let's start with the fourth sentence here. I was disappointed in that restaurant. Well, I can break down this sentence by starting by just saying I was disappointed. Now, the subject is I, so I'm going to start by putting this here. If I want to indicate that I was disappointed, as I taught you in lesson 16, you can just use the word 실망하다. So I'll put that here, 실망하다, and I was disappointed, so it's going to be in the past tense. So I'm going to put 했어요. But that just says I was disappointed. If I want to indicate that I am or I was disappointed in a non-person, and in this case, a restaurant is not a person, what I want to do is, well, I'll just write the word for restaurant first. So I'm going to have 식당. And if I want to indicate that I'm disappointed in a non-person, I should put 에 on the thing that I'm disappointed in. But right now, this is a very sort of small nuance in Korean. Right now, this sentence says, I was disappointed in the restaurant. If I want to indicate that I was disappointed in that restaurant, as you know, I should put 그 before the restaurant. And now this sentence reads, 저는 그 식당에 실망했어요. Now, sentence number 5, that restaurant was disappointing. What I have here is, well, in this case, it's the restaurant that's the subject of the sentence, and I'm describing it as being disappointing. So in this case, I'm not going to see this word I, because I'm not saying anything about I here. I'm just indicating that the restaurant was disappointed. So I'm going to, that restaurant, it's going to be the same as this, but in this case, that's going to be the subject. So I'll put 그 식당은. Now all I need to do is indicate that it was disappointing. Now, and I'll have to conjugate in the past tense. And if you thought the conjugation for the last word on the third sentence was a behemoth, wait till you see this one. Disappointing, again, is it's not 실망하다, but it's going to be 실망스럽다. So I'll start by writing that here. 실망, and it's going to be in the past tense, and I'll do it again in the informal high respect form. So it's going to be 실망스러웠어요. Look at that thing. 실망스러웠어요. Doesn't it flow off my tongue very nicely? This whole sentence would read 그 식당은 실망스러웠어요. I should also point out that this translation for sentence number 4, I could translate this in another way, as you saw in lesson 16. I could, if I wanted to, I could say 저는 그 식당이 실망스러웠어요 for this one up here. However, I wanted to more specifically use the sort of, I don't want to say correct grammar because they would both be correct and they both sound natural. But I really wanted to use, the word 실망하다 to indicate that I was actually disappointed, and it wasn't really the restaurant that was disappointing. And really, that's just me being very pedantic, but I wanted to point out, because I figured I might get a question later on the in the comments saying, hey, couldn't you also translate it this other way that you taught us in the lesson? And yes, you could if you wanted to, but again, I just wanted to actually use this 실망하다 form of the way to say to be disappointed in something. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot.